psychologist on the whole online fiasco. And so what I thought that I would do by me paying attention to all of the comments, and thank you so much for everybody who tuned into part one, which we didn't know it was going to be a multi-part series until we received a lot of questions from social media and mostly under the YouTube page. And so what I thought that I would do is literally comb through all of the questions, because as I had mentioned in part one, if you were able to catch it, is that I am a college professor by nature. I love to teach. I love to simplify things, and I really love to pay it forward. And the whole purpose of the first part was to shed some light on the various processes that take place when someone wants to become licensed. And so we're going to break all of that down, and I am going to show you some updates that have happened for whether you are a individual who is wanting to seek services, whether you want to seek services for your child or your family member, whether you are on platforms and you pull up other people on platforms and they showcase themselves as therapists, healers. And we're going to talk about all the titles and nuances as it relates to things changing even state by state. But I think that this is a well overdue conversation that, to be honest, has been happening all the time in mental health circles. We even talk about it on our, social media and on our podcast. However, if you don't know that those conversations are happening, it's just psychoeducation just sitting there collecting dust. Okay. So to catch you up as a Cliff Notes version, in part one, I talked about how me and a friend graduated from Argosy University back in 2009. We went through the licensing process. We broke down all of the licensure hours and internship and dissertation process and what that looks like, and just rigorous training that goes into getting a doctorate degree. And then I also slightly talked about, which I'll get into today, a master's degree. And so in this particular, conversation today, we're not just talking about, honestly, what everybody else is talking about, which is what happened, because I've watched a lot of I'll call them reaction videos, but I like to pull in a different perspective. And so I like to talk about and bring to the public's eye how this particular situation continues to just stack on top of the levels of distrust that the public, especially Black individuals, have with seeking mental health. I also want to address, how does this topic impact people wanting to find a qualified provider, and how do you know how to read credentials? You know what I'm saying? So we're going to talk about that. And then also a big conversation that really nobody has addressed fully is, how should we hold platforms accountable for how they introduce psychologists, therapists, experts in particular areas to their audience? Because I do believe that there is a level of accountability on the back end space of some of these platforms, or all of the platforms. And I think it's time that we have a conversation. And so let me give a disclaimer, because out of all the comments that I received saying that it was a very thorough and educational conversation that was much overdue, I got a handful of just negatives, right? And it was very clear, more so on social media, that they had not viewed number one. So I want to be clear. This is not about hate. This is about impact. If you want to get to know me, just check out my YouTube videos. I am really focused on paying it forward, and my definition of impact just looks different than others. And so, I talk to different groups of people. For licensed providers, we are trained individuals, and we focus on impact over anything else. And we also have been trained to do no harm. And that's within itself, the whole statement of do no harm is where the uproar came from, because certain things that I'm going to do some myth busters around and just state a fact because of the ethical board, because there are some things that are non-negotiable. We should not be having an in-depth conversation. It's like 1 + 1 = 2. It is what it is. So we will talk about how some things may cause harm based off of how it is presented. Okay. But this conversation also, within my disclaimer, is not coming from, I'm not a random Black woman attacking another Black woman. It is coming from a licensed mental health provider, a clinical psychologist, and I truly understand what it means for the public to be able to trust the health field, let alone the mental health field. Also, titles do matter. Let's be real. How many of you actually know all of these acronyms in the front or in the back, especially the back of someone's name? And lastly, there is just a lot of inaccurate information related to how someone seeks mental health, who can see, who can see mental health clients or patients, and just all that, gray area right there. So we're going to clear that up tonight. And this is not just a conversation around degrees. We covered that in part 1 and we were just stating the facts, okay? But this is this is specifically focused on a lack of accountability when inaccurate information is shared publicly about the therapeutic process, how diagnoses is intertwined with insurance, licensure, and just in general, the mental health process. Okay. So let me go ahead and jump into like the one of the bigger things that came up is with other providers. You saw probably shorter videos on social media. We're talking about how this could be a fallout specifically with Black families, because if you know anything about social psychology, the study of a group of people in so many words, we attract who we are as human beings. We tend to gravitate toward people that look like us, act like us, or who are acclimated in some parts of their life just like us. Like I'm a mom, so I may be more prone to have conversations around parenting with mothers, right? I'm married. I want to be happy in my marriage, clearly. So I'm going to talk to people that are happy, not bitter, right? And so we socially automatically connect with certain groups of people. And this is why, by human nature, people just type into Google. Like I know for myself, I ask people how they found me, and they will say Black therapist, and then Google will say near me. And then based off of how I've presented myself, based off of a picture, a video, or words, then it will pull me up to the top of the page. And that's how most people get linked with mental health providers. Okay. So let me go over to the chat box. Hey, great day. All right. So when it comes down to, I'll just say Black, when it comes down to Black communities, let's be real. I mean, a lot of communities have had to struggle right now with all the politics stuff that's going on. But I just know personally, being an African American Black woman, we already carry a level of distrust for systems, right? Let alone individuals who, see us and then we work in the system, AKA mental health providers. And so trust as an issue there has already been there. On top of that, in 2020, because we all remember what happened then, it was like mental health was at an all-time high. And I want to position these conversations for the public to understand the insider perspective also as to why there are not a lot of Black providers. The key word though is available. It doesn't mean that it's a lot of us in general, but also the ones who are, out there and licensed, we may not be available. And here is why. If you just Google the statistics for any ethnicity, and you put in their license type, or you just say master's degree or therapist or psychologist, don't put in psychiatrist, it's going to blow your mind. The numbers are like less than 5%. Okay. We going down to like 1 to 2% if we're talking about Black women. So if you take that very small percentage and then you look at all the people that want that type of therapist in the whole United States, right? What will happen is our caseloads get full very fast. We should only be treating people within our scope of practice. Well, what does scope mean? Scope means when I went to school, I got training in class. When I went to my internship and collected over 3,000 hours, I received various types of experience working with different types of clients, AKA I'm building up my expertise. Then after that, I graduate, but I'm not done with my hours. So I got to study for my exam, but that means that I still need to get hours to work with a certain. I want to say this nicely. If a therapist says we're not a good match, or if you don't read the description when you're finding a therapist about how they do therapy, what are they focused on in therapy, and not just say, can you just call me because I like your picture, being funny, but I'm being real. That's how we judge people these days in 2026. I would highly encourage you to read about the therapist, request a consultation, and actually make sure, like you test drive in the car, make sure that it is a good match. The analogy I give to individuals that I work with in the community is it's like Pandora's box. I don't get why someone would ever want to open up their Pandora's box AKA your skeletons in your closet, right? The things that you don't want to talk to nobody about, or the things that you've been holding in that you know need to come out and you need to process, you need to forgive, you need to be able to have tools to be able to work through it and move forward, right? And so why would you want to open up a Pandora's box to random people, meaning like different therapists back to back? Find one, do a consultation, open up a little bit so they can know your presenting problem. And then that's when they will let you know, one, if they're available based off your availability in person versus online. And ultimately, are they a good match for the problem that you are seeking to solve? Okay. So, all of that in place, this is why Black clinicians are up to here in terms of caseloads, because it is a numbers problem. It is more individuals than it is of us. Okay. And then we also are very particular with who we serve. So I just wanted to clear that up because I think that that's a conversation that happens behind closed doors. And I hear it when I go talk to places like churches, like, why can't I find a therapist? Okay. Also, when we look at mental health providers in the online space, there is nothing wrong with mental health providers branding themselves. I am a therapist business mentor for therapists who are opening up their businesses and or streams of income because I pride myself in focusing on ethics, them operating within the scope of not getting their license revoked. We work too hard to just want to show up online and just look like everybody else. No, we have rules and regulations. But with that in mind, there's nothing wrong with a therapist showing up and saying, this is what I do, and them presenting themselves in a light that will pull them on platforms. However, there are particular things that we're going to talk about that these platforms have to be very responsible for, because when you are putting someone in a chair and you give them a microphone and you let them speak whatever their philosophy is to your audience is automatically going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Why? Because it was considered a warm handoff. Okay. So, as mental health providers ourselves, we cannot afford to just one, shove people into therapy. We also do not want to start as a provider positioning ourselves that we are the end all be all and that we can serve everybody. All of us have a brand, which means that for us, we are practicing within the scope of what we got licensed for. And we also should not be okay with misinformation being presented about us. So I'm going to give you an example. This was something that I saw come up in like a couple of podcast episodes. What happens when we are misrepresented? Now, what should happen? I have what's called a PsyD, PSYD, a doctorate in psychology, practicing mental health services. It's not as heavy as research based like a PhD. Okay. And so when I tell people that I have a PsyD, most people don't know what that is. So when I go speak, I always will ask, can I see the flyer? Can you tag me on social media? Or actually, can I see the post before you post it? Because most people are going to just type PhD. So this is an example of what's happening right now that can be easily, as Dr. Roche had said in part one, easily corrected if we just recognize, you know what, we've led the public down a pathway that is not accurate. So let's clean it up. So an easy way to clean up if there is a mistake, because I've seen mistakes on my name and my title, and I will say, actually, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm a psychologist. Well, what's the difference? Psychiatrists went to medical school. We went to psychology school to get our master's and our doctorate degree, and we got licensed there. We did rotations on mental health or research. Psychiatry, they went to medical school and then they did rotations in their internship hours in mental health. Okay. So I'm not a psychiatrist. We have to correct them. They put PhD. I am a PsyD. And then I will educate them about what that means. I wanted to put that out there because that is on us as the provider within our brand to make sure that people are corrected. Okay. So if you pull people on your platform, if you have a podcast or something like that, make sure that you clarify it. I would honestly ask for somebody to send it in writing so that you can make sure that you're not making any mistakes. Okay. But going back to, before I move on to the next topic, the 2020 like epidemic situation is that a lot of people were at home. A lot of us realized that we needed mental health, and we probably always needed mental health, but it was in our face at that point. And then what started to happen is more and more providers got full, overly full. Example, my caseload literally doubled in 7 days. And then over time, if you were to reach out to me, I would have to say, I'm not available. Okay. Does that make sense? Put a one in the comment box if that makes sense. I'll be acting like, I'm talking to clinicians or something, and I'm like, I wish I could see y'all. I wish we all on Zoom or something so I can see y'all. Okay. So right now I want to do some myth busters. I got to do some myth busters because I've been reading all these comments. Okay. So this is what I believe was the trigger to therapists going in a good way crazy in the chat box. And so I'm not going to pull up the clip. I think we've seen enough of it. But there was a statement in the very first episode on Joe Budden that talked about how, like, a myth is insurance is only used to diagnose people in terms of like why we need a license. Like, a therapist only needs a license if they want to bill insurance. I'm sure everybody saw that clip, right? And so here's the fact. Okay. A license exists to create structure for us, just like you have structure for your kids. Okay. A license exists for us to stand up and operate within standards, expectations, right? It makes sense. A license exists for guardrails to make sure that we do not do harm. That is it. There's no argument to why does a license for anyone exist. When you go get your hair done, they actually tell us in the board, if I had a physical office, I have to have my license on the wall. When you go get your hair done, the cosmopolitan, whatever they call, they license got to be on the wall. Gentlemen, when you get your hair cut, if they're licensed, it has to be on the wall. That's just not a license. That is the state, and that is our ethical board. There is no argument. There is no hate with that. That is a factual statement. Okay. And again, these are all in place to protect the public. Now, why would that be important, you ask? If you've ever taken Psychology 1, you would have heard of horrific case studies way back in the day. And when psychology first came out in terms of treating the public, there were mishaps that were happening even before social media was a thing, AKA in the therapy room. Y'all see it on movies when they inaccurately portray what mental health looks like a lot of the time. And so because all of these bad things were happening, guess what happened? The licensing board, ethics, they put together a list of APA, American Psychological Association codes. We have to learn those codes to get licensed. That's why it's 2 exams. One exam is textbook information. Do you understand diagnoses? Do you understand and are you culturally competent to treat different groups of people? That is factual. That is not up for debate. Okay. Then we take a ethics exam. Ethics exam changes per state. If I move to Texas, if I want to get licensed in Texas, I need to take whatever their requirement is to make sure that I understand their rules. 2020 allowed therapists, because of the boom of telehealth, to get licensed in, I know somebody who licensed in 30 states. Does that person have to keep up with their brand and appearance online and licensure, paperwork in all those states? Yes. But guess what they also have to do? They have to make sure that they are within ethical guidelines in every single state. This is why the board requires, or I'm going to say suggests, because it ain't been a hard, fast rule yet. But if we keep acting up online, it will be. See, this is the problem. This is what let me keep it all the way real. When I talk to my therapist coaching clients, meaning they are therapists opening up businesses, okay? And they come to me and they say, hey, somebody hit me up and they want coaching and they've done a consultation. My first question is, based off of the consultation that you have with that person, do you believe, based off of your clinical experience, because see, you are a clinician first, unless you dropped your license or something. So within your clinical expertise as a provider, do you believe that this person should be in therapy, AKA we're honestly working through a lot of baggage? We ain't got time to focus on the future. We can have it on our vision board, but we got to really dive into the past. Or do you believe this person is readily able to focus on doing an intake on the past, but then moving toward the future? And 99.9% of the time, when therapists do their job, they actually will say, they actually saw that I did coaching online, but they clinically need therapy. My recommendation to protect themselves, even if it's not in the ethical code, I'm saying this out loud, even if it's not in our ethical code that therapists cannot do coaching, I tell therapists tread lightly Because if it walks like a duck, if it talks like a duck, if it sounds like a duck, it's a goddamn duck. What do I mean by that, Dr. TK? Well, let's just say, I like to use little analogies. I'm gonna use my lip gloss. So let's just say this person over here started with a therapist doing mental health, right? Like we saw that it was clinical need there. We start seeing them. But this therapist right here, they also do coaching. They see each other in a therapeutic relationship, right? This person gets good. They don't need therapy. They tapering down, meaning they're going down on their sessions. They don't need it as much anymore. You know what? I saw you do coaching. I saw you do a TikTok video. You do coaching. They talking, right? So what would happen if this therapist decided, let me just go ahead and close your case and let me just move you over to coaching? Now that might seem simple to understand because hopefully they qualify to help them with the coaching problem. Here's the problem. She or he has already told you in therapy that they've been going through some relationship problems, right? But then they're in a better space. So they cross over to coaching. Everything is good for, let's make it up, 6 months in coaching, career coaching, life coaching, whatever you want to call it, right? So then what you don't know is that they've been talking to somebody and that person done broke their heart. They in a crisis. So what happens is now they come to a session that you think is coaching, and they see you though still as their therapist because that's the person they saw in a crisis. This is the public problem with experts talking about healing trauma. This is why therapists are not influencers. We may influence your ability to understand psychoeducation around mental health, but our job as scientists is backed up by evidence-based practices. That's why it takes so long. There's been years, decades of research based off of what we do over here. Anybody can roll out of bed today and become a coach all day long. Are there credentials for coaching? Yes. Are they sound? It depends. All right. So just, I wanted to clear that up because the myth about the only reason we need a license is to bill insurance, that is inaccurate. But since we're talking about insurance, and I know the public has asked me this question, let's break it down. When you do see a provider, and share this with somebody that you know who is looking for a therapist, okay? When you are wanting to use your insurance, you will either have a copay or a deductible or nothing. You have to understand how your insurance works. We're not gonna get into that. But in order for us as providers to use your insurance, we have to be credentialed with the provider, with the insurance company, and we're not credentialed with all of them for various reasons, okay? But when we turn in the paperwork for your session, there has to be a diagnosis. Yes, there does. We have to document what the diagnosis was and supportive evidence of how you met the criteria. So we just slap on depression. We don't just slap on PTSD. We have a list of thorough questions that we have to ask, which is why we asking questions for probably 3 sessions. Okay. So we are looking to see if you fit within the requirements of billing your insurance. And that's why on that episode, she also had mentioned, which is factual, that this is why some therapists don't mess with insurance companies because they have too many parameters. But see, parameters I get is one thing, but not wanting to operate under an accountability board called the ethics board, that's a whole nother, conversation. Okay. So, I'm gonna go over to the chat box. Let's see. So I'm not in your industry, but that's like super big. But let's see. I was concerned when she said she was a child with trauma who was sold, with her mother, and just a lot of things that happened. So let me be clear. There is nothing wrong as myself, as a even provider, in which we use our past experiences to pay it forward. However, the reason why, again, ethics and our board exists is that there are specific areas that I just believe the general public, you need to go to a trained provider who has hours of supervision of ensuring that they can provide you with services and a outcome. Typically with trauma, other people may differ. I just don't think there's no cure after a session. There's no cure after a podcast. That's just my personal opinion. Don't come after me. We all entitled to opinions. I'm just here to educate you on what is factual related to being a board licensed clinical psychologist in the state of California. Okay. And let me address this. If a person chooses not to use their insurance, see, here's where, again, ethics come into play and integrity. Okay. So if you choose not to use your insurance, we have to ask you, I ask, this is me, can you sign a document saying I educated you that I take your insurance? Because see, this is our contract with an insurance company now. We can't just all of a sudden for random people say we are or are not taking your insurance. If we are credentialed with the panel and we have availability, we have to allow you to use your insurance. But there are certain people in certain industries that don't want a paper trail. I get it. I've had parents to protect their children and say, I don't know what my kid gonna do after college. So I don't want no like beyond your record, a record. You feel me? Because certain jobs like becoming a probation officer, correctional officer, I'm just saying where I've worked, social workers, there are background checks that run stuff like this. Okay. So with that in mind, because some people do not want it on other records, they will choose to pay out of pocket. That is your prerogative if you are that client. But just know that if you have a therapist like myself, I'm going to ask you to sign an affidavit to basically say, I informed you that you can use your therapy, but you're opting out of using your insurance. Okay. So as a licensed provider, we still have ethical guidelines. We still have legal responsibilities. We still have insurance contractual responsibilities, which is why I am thoroughly going over this because I truly believe, one, the public thinks that all therapists were credentialed. And P.S., not all providers are licensed in all states. Okay. So someone says, I agree that happens. Yeah, with the military. Oh, yeah. Like, oh, don't even go there. All right. So I used to work with veterans and do veteran assessments. And yeah, I've heard some things. Okay. So I know that I've talked a little bit about who I am. We didn't get into it in video number 1, but this kind of addresses some of the like handful of comments that I got, like, who are you to be speaking about this topic, beyond my license. And so in short, what qualifies me to speak about this particular topic, even outside of me being licensed in the state for over 15 years, is I've worked with various mental health clients and providers all over the country, right? For over 2 decades. I am a APA certified instructor. Well, what does that mean? That means that I have been approved through another board to do workshops with therapists to help them stay up to date with what's pertaining to things in our field, especially with ethics. That is one of my specialties. Another specialty of mine is quality assurance. What is quality assurance? If you go see a therapist at a clinic, there is always somebody in the background. I was known as the quality assurance psychologist. Okay. And this may sound boring, but I want you to know what goes on behind the scenes when you go to these agencies or even a private practice, someone's office with various therapists. You got to know what's happening behind the scenes to protect you. So, quality assurance, we're in charge of making sure that your information is documented appropriately, meaning we gathered all the information and the diagnosis that we have on a sheet of paper is in support of what the client actually said, which is why, again, we have to ask so many questions, which means that there's a paper trail electronically. Really, these days, back in the day, it used to be paper. We also have to make sure that therapists are operating within compliance. So I'm going to loop this back to why ethics is so freaking important. And for someone who chooses to opt out of, for whatever reason, that they don't want to be under these boards, depending on what you need help with, you really need to question, should you be seeing someone under a board or should you be seeing someone who built a brand, which is great, but you don't really have any evidence outside of like, what they said online in terms of where is the collection of like their expertise coming from. Like, if we got that paper and we continue to have a license, we had to still work to keep it. Okay. So we have to be compliant. And also quality assurance is that, like I said earlier, we have to make sure that therapists are operating in their scope of practice. Well, what does this look like? We are all familiar with autism, right? And so even though we were taught in school about autistic spectrum disorders, it does not make us automatically an expert in autism. So you can call me as my friend and say, hey, TK, like, do you know? I know, but I don't, right? I don't have clinical hours treating autistic children. I don't have hours doing psychological testing as a psychologist on autistic children. I don't have experience writing up recommendations for schools and parents for autistic children. So would not be a fraud If I went online and said, I'm an expert in all things, or I'm an expert in all things related to childhood, no, that would actually be unethical, right? I'm gonna keep throwing that word in your face. Okay. So next I want to talk about, this came up a lot, is the whole how can I say it? Like the various titles. And so I'm not about to go through all these titles. Just know that every state has a different title outside of some titles stay the same. So psychiatrist, that title doesn't change. Psychologist can vary, but the word psychologist does not change. So you can be I'm a clinical psychologist. That means that I was trained in a breadth of different parts of diagnoses, treatment planning, how to serve different clients with different diagnoses, working in various settings. I chose that because if I would have chose, for example, school psychology, I would have been locked into being at schools or working within school settings and institutions. I did not choose that. I could have chose marriage and family therapy, and I'm sure I can be within, beyond the scope of just serving families and couples if I got experience. But the coursework dictates typically where I'm gonna go do my internship. Okay, so some titles that you might be familiar with is therapist, licensed therapist, psychotherapist, psychologist, variations of developmental licensed psychologist, clinical psychologist, forensic psychologist. But then people call themselves doctor. Some people call themselves coach. Some people call themselves a mental health expert. All I'm asking you to do, and I'm a real big advocate for families with children, with minors, and I call minors nowadays under 25, okay, college kids. You need to protect your children at all costs. You don't just send someone to go see someone because you saw them on a TV show. And I'm not talking about her. I've been watching this on all these Housewives of Beverly Hills, Orange County for 2 decades. You know what I'm saying? Like, where do these experiences come from? Do your homework. Okay. And in some states, you got to know that the license title does change. Okay. So let's go into the hot topic of coaching versus therapy and why clarity to me matters. Okay. So coaching is not automatically wrong. Okay. The word itself is not innate, like, oh my gosh, I got to stay back. This person is bad. Therapy also is not automatically better than coaching. People have to be properly trained. Okay. But I want to be clear, they're not the same thing. Okay. So as a mental health provider, we have to be very clear with the public of what service we're offering. Individual therapy, family therapy, group therapy. Do we treat a certain diagnoses? Do we have expertise in a particular area like trauma, relationships, couples? And we should be able to back it up. Back it up. Okay. We also should be able to tell someone if they're entering into therapy or coaching. As I mentioned earlier with the example, I would not recommend therapists to cross someone over. So if you're a person and you don't like your therapist, just do yourself a favor. Do not ask them to just cross over to coaching, because the question now becomes, can you now see them as your coach? Or when you're in a crisis, you can't be going back and forth like double dutch. This week I'm a therapist, or that's my therapist. And 2 weeks later, can you be my career coach? Pick a lane. Pick a lane. Get someone else to be your career coach and stick with your therapist. Have booster sessions. See them once a month, but let them stay in the lane of what they're treating you for. Okay. And also, as providers, when it comes down to coaching versus therapy, as I mentioned before, our ethics code is why guardrails are there. Okay. So I'm asking providers, I'm asking the general public, find one provider per lane so that lines do not get blurry. Okay. So let's get into the fun part. Because this one, might cause some uproar. I don't know. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to check someone's credentials. And things have a change. Let me go over to the chat box. Things have evolved. And so this topic came up too, and people were like, well, Dr. Phil and all these coaches. Okay. I would encourage you, because I don't want to make this a Dr. Phil show, but I think where the uproar, I said, I think, based on my conversations, I think that the uproar from therapists came from, in comparison to Cheyenne, is the transparency piece, right? So if we look at Dr. Phil, he made it clear, I used to be, I was in school, all that kind of stuff, but I don't have a license. He didn't hide it. When people asked, he said it. I'm gonna leave it there. That is the trigger point for at least the therapist that I have spoken to. That's it. It was just straightforward. Okay. So let's talk about credentials. Let's talk about credentials. Okay. So one of the biggest questions that I got was, how do I know if somebody's actually licensed? You know what I'm saying? Like, can you walk us through? So there's been an update to the system. I'm going to share my screen and I'm even going to show you how I got here. So let me see, window. Where is it at? Okay. Y'all should be able to see this screen. Put a one in the comment box if y'all can see this, if you could type back. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna show y'all something. I'm gonna go to, if you go to Google, this is the state of California. So in the state of California, okay, let me slow down because this is gonna confuse people. Every state has their own licensing board. Every state has up to 3 licensing boards for mental health providers. Just write that down. Okay. Why are there 3? You have clearly your medical board. That's for psychiatrists in our field. Okay. Then you also have the board of psychology for psychologists. We are very straightforward, like psychiatry, medical, psychologist, board of psychology, whatever state you're in. Then you have a larger cluster, and this is where it gets very, very just confusing, is there are master's degrees. So, for example, there are individuals who go to work for clinical social work and those who go to school for social work. So some people who go to school for social work may have a master's in social work, MSW. People who are getting their hours may say, I am a ASW or something, or associate, right? All these acronyms. When someone becomes a psychologist, when we are in school, we're a student. When we are collecting our hours and we're in school, we are pre-doc psychologists, like future psychologists. When we graduate, we are a post-doc, what makes it like post-doctorate, like graduate, you know? And then once we get licensed, we are a, whatever the front is, our licensing board, clinical psychologist, okay? So write this down, DCA license search. Now, this is in the state of California. You have to find the one that matches your state, okay? So I'm just going to show you a quick state, and this is relevant. Why? Because I'm in the same state as she, okay? So if y'all want to do your own extra homework, I'm just going to look up myself so y'all can see how to do it, okay? So I'm going to click on this thing here. To verify a license, this is public, no login. To verify a license, visit here, DCA license search, okay? Y'all see that? All right, so I'm going to scroll down. Now, remember me and Dr. Roche were singing our song. I could put in my number 24698, you know, but I'm going to put in my name because most people in the public, unless it's on somebody's website, you aren't going to know their license number. So I'm going to type in, because I have a uniquely spelled first name, Takesha without an H. Okay. Then I'm going to type in Jackson. Okay. Everybody see that? So Takesha Jackson, I didn't put nothing else. Okay. Now, this has become very advanced where if you had a master's degree, you would have to log into one website. And if you have a psychology doctorate degree, you have to log into another site. So they combined it. I'm going to click search. Okay. Loading. Now you may be wondering, girl, why is it like 20 results for your name? Well, if you caught interview number 1, I had stated that I got my master's degree at Cal State Dominguez Hills. It was a master's degree in clinical psychology. And I knew that it wasn't going to lead to a license, but I didn't know if I wanted to get a doctorate. So I opted in to take another year of coursework so that I can sit for being a marriage and family therapist. Apparently so did she, right? I'm just using common language so that y'all can match the two from the interviews, okay? So when I was going for the marriage and family therapist license, this means that I still have to collect 3,000 hours. I still have to be on supervision, okay? Now, this is the part that people probably skip over, okay? I'm going to really break this down because I want y'all to be highly qualified to look people up, okay? So you will see here, and I've had 2 names because I've been married, okay? So that's another thing. If somebody been married, you got to know both of their names. So it says Takesha Jackson, right? Previous name, different. That's not my license number. It says license type, registered psychologist, license status, do not freak out. It says canceled. Well, why does it say canceled? Pay attention to this little box. So canceled means pursuant to Senate Bill, the state, the board no longer register psychologists as of January 2022. They do some different stuff. All registered psychologist registrations reflect a canceled status. Registration means it has been either voluntarily canceled. This means I choose to not renew my license. That's what canceled could mean. It could also mean, or the renewable registration has reached a 30-month limit. No practice is permitted. This is the catch 22. They don't give us all day long to get our hours, to get licensed. These state boards ain't playing with us. You have a 6-year expiration date, AKA get a job if you want to. But if you don't collect these hours, you can't get licensed. Okay. So that was me when I was working back in 2012. That was a long time ago. Okay. So there's another description somewhere in here that I would see. This is my active one. So look at this one. This is a license number, license type, license renewed, which means that I did whatever I was supposed to do, 36 continuing educational units to stay licensed. Stay, right? Okay. I'm current. Y'all see that? Current. Okay. License expiration date. Dr. Roche said this. Oh, it's going to be somewhere around your birthday, girl. September 6th, my birthday. Say, happy birthday, Virgo. Okay. So September 30th, I just renewed in 2025. I got my little card in my wallet. They give it to us like a little driver's license now, not a little sheet of paper, upgraded. It expires in 2027. What does this mean? This means that I got 2 years to get them 36 hours again. Okay. Secondary status, NA. And then it typically has like whatever address we have on file. Okay. There was one I wanted to show you. It's somewhere in here. Oh, here it is right here. So look at this one. This one is different. So this, I think this was one of the ones, that I was close to licensure. So look, here's my name. Here's my quote unquote license number, AKA license type. I'm a registered psychological associate, AKA postdoc, postgraduate, earning my hours, working on the exam. Okay. Registered, canceled again. But I want you to pay attention to this. Or the registration has been canceled. Look at the second to last line, has been canceled upon issuance of a psychologist license. So if anyone says, well, I don't know why you can't find me. Either A, they were licensed in a different state and you're looking under a different state. B, they have a different name. Or C, it don't exist. Can I get a license without a doctorate? If you go to a master's program for social work, counseling, other different nuances, you got to look up the schools, you will still have to get 3,000 hours and you will have to sit for 2 exams. So look, this is a different one. Marriage and family therapist. This is through, look at, so I don't know if y'all can see this. It says Board of Psychology. You see this little logo? That's Board of Psychology. This is BBS. That's what I meant by combined. So when she said, I did all these masters and, I guess doctoral programs, and I was practicing. That's the video that I saw. I was practicing as a marriage and family therapist. However, I may have mixed up the words. Don't come for me. But all I'm saying is if someone went to school and they start collecting hours, even if they did not finish, you would see this right here, canceled. So you can interpret whatever you want to interpret. My goal is to simply provide you with the facts. Put a 1 in the comment box if you like, that was so simple. Why couldn't people just say this? Well, some of the simplest things are just, I guess, difficult to say. I don't know. Right? Like it's crazy to me, right? It's crazy. Okay. All right. So, all right, let's keep going. All right, so let's get down to the other bigger topic, which is holding platforms accountable. Okay. Holding platforms accountable. Okay. So this is what I want the public to understand in a day and age where everything is online. A lot is online. Okay. Coming from the platform's perspective, not taking up for anybody's platform. Platforms typically call guests on for entertainment, education, and/or expertise. Typically, the last two are combined. You're going to educate my audience, and you're going to do it from a place of expertise. You're going to come and entertain my audience, maybe based on your expertise through lived experience, career experience, or whatever the topic that we're talking about, right? It could be a blend of all three. That's one thing I want you to understand. So, excuse me, if it is entertainment, the platform is more than likely, whether you like it or not, it's going to prioritize reach, meaning more people, and controversy, clickbait. They gonna put some on there that you like, oh, I'm not a clickbaity person. Okay. So my husband is upstairs. He can tell you. He's been trying to get me to do reaction videos since before I got licensed. And I was just like, that's not who I am. I'm an educator. I can't do it, right? Because I just feel like that's fraudulent to who I am. Okay. Now, my reaction in this instance, and the only other time that I actually did a reaction video was like back in 2018. And it was when YG and Taraji P. Henson went on the Breakfast Club and some other platforms. And she was talking about her foundation, the Boris L. Henson Foundation. Go check it out. Okay. For mental health services and all across the country for mental health providers too. And they were talking about how hard it is to find a Black provider. And so I did a reaction live stream just simply on Instagram about YG because I'm from Compton. And it hurt my soul to know that there are people out there doing the work. But if unfortunately we're not seen, people like him don't even know that people like us actually exist. So I chose to do a reaction video for, honestly, the people I grew up around to say, people in the industry are struggling as well. I call it like, they got hood trauma, you know what I'm saying? And people need help. And so go watch the video. It is very informative, but I also want you to know that there are people like myself that actually are very willing to help you. You just got to tell us you need help. When I tell you I had so many women and men from my neighborhoods in Compton, LA, Long Beach, Watts, like places that I've worked as well. And they were like, nobody actually broke down trauma like that from a hood perspective. You feel me? Because that's what I did. That was my kind of reaction video, is education. Okay. So when it is education, we should prioritize accuracy. So that's why I say disclaimer, don't come for me. People who, little handful of people that said like hate with a fake account because no face, you know what I'm saying? Like, whatever, just go watch the video because it's clear you didn't watch it. It's good, right? If people are coming from their expertise, they should be very clear on what kind of expertise they are putting out there on the platform. And they need to have evidence to back it up. Okay. So what platforms and brands should be asking? So listen, if you got friends in the industry or people calling people on a podcast, I'm going to go over right now questions that these platforms need to ask. Okay. If ain't nobody, I ain't heard nobody talk about this. We talk about it behind the scenes, but nobody like out loud for real. So I said this in the very beginning. If you call somebody on your platform, please make sure you have the correct title and look it up. What degree does the person hold? You need to know what the acronyms mean and what that's going to mean to their audience, because some acronyms automatically bring like attractability, I trust you, right? But we got to make sure that person can back it up. If you do have someone coming on there talking about mental health services, because I can only talk about what I'm an expert in, you want to make sure that that person is licensed, okay? Especially based off, depending on what they're talking about. If the person is coming on the platform and they say they're licensed, what board are you licensed in? Like I said earlier, from 2020, a lot of therapists are licensed in various states. You may go on the website and notice that one state now says canceled. It doesn't mean they're not licensed. It just means that they're not licensed in the state that you live, which means that they cannot see you as a licensed provider. That's the other ethical rule. So if my clients, I've had clients that do various things, okay? And sometimes they travel and they work for travel. If they're not gone for an extended period of time, I consult with my malpractice insurance to protect my license. I ain't going to jail. I'm not being fined $50,000 to $100,000 for violating a simple ethical code. Absolutely not. You got me twisted. Well, can you just see me? Ain't nobody gonna know. I'm gonna know. That is the kind of book, by the book person I am. And some people don't like that. And that's cool, right? But that's me. And so find out what state they're licensed. And then if someone is coming on a platform to discuss mental health publicly, you want to ask them, are they speaking as a licensed clinician? Because they don't need to say certain words if they're not. Are they speaking as a coach? Stay in your lane with coaching words, okay? Are they a content creator? Are they focused on lived experience? If you're focused on lived experience, say words like based off my lived experience. If you are a licensed provider, you can back it up with evidence-based practices. If you are a coach, I don't know where your information came from, but you better be able to back it up and not say you a therapist. Period, point blank. Don't argue with me for that. Okay. That's just what it is. Another thing, are there any legal or ethical concerns? This is good. With how someone should introduce the person to their audience. Certain titles automatically to the public's eye gives credibility. We got to be in 2026, clearly from this situation, very, very careful, right? So I'm gonna give you a off the wall example. So as a clinical psychologist, I go into various institutions, schools, nonprofits, churches to do workshops on trauma informed care, allowing individuals, honestly, from the streets, coming out of correctional facilities, not ex, but gang members, you know what I'm saying? Like they go to these sites to seek help, to seek second chance. I worked a lot with those programs. And one of the lessons that I learned early on is build rapport super fast. So I don't mind saying I'm from Compton because that automatically lowers their barrier, like chill. You know what I'm saying? And so after that, because the staff has said, oh, this Dr. Jackson, psych, mental health lady, psychologist, I'm like, let's roll it back. Let's talk about how we about to introduce myself to this audience. Am I a licensed psychologist? So I will literally be standing up and I'll say, I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. My name is Dr. So-and-so, but I am the facilitator of this workshop. I will not be referred to you. And I want y'all to put a one in the comment box if this is making sense. Like, damn, I wish that most people would just simply educate and give people guardrails. So I will say, I am not your therapist. I'm no one's therapist on this site. I am a psychologist in my clinical practice. I am here to do a workshop based on my expertise as a clinical psychologist doing the work. And then they hear about my history of where I've worked and all those things to make they guard go down some more. But I stated over and over again, I'm the facilitator of this workshop. I am not your therapist. When I go to churches, same thing. Mental Health Awareness Month, popping. Bishop at one point wanted us to come up to the pulpit area and he said, I'm going to have people text me questions. And I said, Bishop, I want to make it clear to the congregation, even though I'm a licensed psychologist, I'm not theirs. I didn't do an intake. I cannot diagnose your problem in a text message. I would need to sit down with you and to make sure that I can actually serve you. So some questions are not going to get answered. To me, that is quality assurance if you heard the beginning of this video, okay? So another question, last one in this particular topic is, could somebody's audience reasonably, like 10%, misunderstand somebody's qualifications based on the framing in which they say their title? Now, it sounds like that is what's happening right now because of how either she or the platform has framed the expertise and now it's being questioned and it's not being answered. It has created a horrible, horrible situation, right? I'm glad. Thank you. I'm going to the chat box, right? Obviously done damage to the field of counseling. Yeah, that's why I'm doing this. Because like, I just want the public to know why we pissed off. Like therapy people, like why we're upset and we have a rights. Okay. So let's talk about why platforms should care. You know, if you a platform person, why you should care if you want to invite somebody on. Okay. And so when you introduce someone to your audience as the expert, I don't care if you got a gaming audience, okay? And you talking about addiction again, I don't care, right? If you're introducing someone to your audience, you need to do your due diligence to make sure that you understand what they're bringing to your audience. Because whatever they say is going to impact your audience, your ability to build continuous public trust with your current and future audience. And then also, to be honest, from a provider's perspective, it puts us in a chokehold because unfortunately, even though it may not have been clearly intentional, it has now had statements around myths that applies for whatever reason to the whole mental health realm. That's why we're in an uproar. So if someone even slightly mentions a degree, a license, a clinical title, the platform should know enough about the person to ask follow-up questions to get clarity before they pull this person on the platform. That is, I'm going to put that on the platform. Okay. So why this matters for mental health. Again, I love my people. I love the community, right? Like I said, we saw already from 2020 how much people out the woodworks needed mental health, probably because we living with these people that we ain't seen, and now we got to see you every day, right? And I would say the high level of need is gone, but it doesn't mean that people aren't seeking mental health. And we know that people cannot be cured by watching a podcast. People cannot be cured by reading one book. People cannot be cured by building this is big, one-sided attachment, a pseudo relationship with somebody online that don't even know they exist. Okay. So tools that we use in mental health services, they're used to support people. Okay. Our job is not to replace mental health services with a quick fix because it looks cute and it looks branded. This is to even mental health providers. Your job is to stay in your lane, okay? And to top it all off, because a lot of people are asking just about the licensure process and the ethics, right? Our ethics code and our licensing board exists to do no harm. That is just what it is. And our goal is for that to benefit the people that we serve, you, and the public, okay? So questions that I'm being asked now, let me look at my notes. Somebody had asked, like, straight up, like, is the person wrong? Okay. And I don't like to answer questions like just unless they're factual, like the ones I talked about, and I like to ask better quality questions. Okay. Because some questions are just loaded. Okay. So this is what I will ask you. If that's been your question, like, was she wrong? Okay. Especially if you're not in our field, is ask yourself, what are we teaching the public about mental health? Are we making therapy feel more confusing or more accessible? Are platforms, podcasts, doing enough before giving somebody a microphone? These are questions we should be asking. Are we protecting the integrity of the field of mental health to be available for people to get help, that for people to rely on, and people also to seek out when they're in the hardest moments of their life? Or do we just say, take the easy way out and watch a podcast episode? Now, there's nothing wrong with podcasts. I have one. This is one. I'm just doing a different type of topic. Okay. But we need to make sure that if we give people a microphone, that it's going to serve the audience, not do more harm. Okay. So I'm not here to increase stigma on mental health, clearly. I'm not even here to drag individuals through the mud. I'm here to simply shed light and to educate on what really goes down in the mental health field, because unfortunately, like I said in part 1 with Dr. Roche, our ethics board exists because bad things happen. And when bad things happen, that's when everybody got questions. And I guess that's just the way that life works. But it doesn't mean that these questions should die down. And I believe that everybody, the public, you deserve accuracy, which is why we're here tonight. You deserve transparency, meaning Dr. Roche talked about that very, very well, versus honesty. We want transparency. Just tell us even things that we didn't even ask questions for and put it out there. We have a right to know. Accountability is huge. I heard a podcast earlier today and I'm like, oh, I'm going to say this. I can't remember who it was, but this individual said it's interesting from a service provider perspective. If we are expecting our clients to be accountable, I know I say this to therapy clients and therapists serving clients. If you want your clients to do homework and be accountable for what they're coming to therapy for, but you're not accountable behind closed doors in your life and in your business, shame on you. We have to be accountable as well, especially if we're in the limelight, right? But at the end of the day, people should have access to qualified care. So I'm letting you know, when you go find a provider, ask for a consultation. When you go and find the provider, make sure, here, let me pull up, I'm gonna pull up a couple of ones, okay? When you go look for a provider, make sure you go read and make sure that you're a good match for them, okay? So I'm gonna pull up a couple of platforms just to show you like how to read these platforms, okay? Is this helpful, y'all? Let me go to the chat box, sorry. I don't agree with her, but she's not hands down, she's not the only one. We said this earlier. I just want to be clear about this. I need this to be crystal clear. I know, some people later aren't going to hear this, but I want to be crystal clear. It's not that we don't see other people. I'm saying we therapists. I'm speaking up on behalf of therapists. Because, see, there are particular areas for me as a person that I just got a real thick black ass line. Like, we not playing here. One of them is my children and children, especially black kids. Okay. My black and brown specifically. Okay. I don't play about my family. I don't play about those who grew up in communities, marginalized communities like mine, and have things that are inaccessible. And I definitely do not play about future and current providers, because it's bad enough we're not seen, we're not heard, but then we're called on when it's a state of emergency. So it doesn't mean that we don't see other things, but when someone is stating inaccuracies, it makes it very difficult for the public to then take certain things seriously when we say, actually, no, this is how insurance works. Actually, no. Like, why are we out here fighting for our lives as a provider from a pseudo relationship online? You feel me? So, all right. So let me pull up a screen. So I myself just started seeing like a handful of clients. And when I say a handful, I mean a handful. This, like, in mental health awareness month, I typically do give back. Okay. I realized my face wasn't showing on the other one. Okay. Can y'all see this? So I just want you to pay attention to something. Okay. When you're going to look for a provider, you're going to find their directory, their website, their social media. Do not DM a provider asking all these personal questions. We're not doing that. That's HIPAA. We're not doing that. Okay. So if a therapist says, can I take you off the platform, or they have an automated message, don't keep messaging them about your relationship problems. I'm laughing, but the stuff that I've seen over the last decade and a half in my DM, y'all, DM is not, first of all, it ain't even private. It has never been private, but it is not a HIPAA compliant platform. Okay. So if you want to find a provider, find out their processes to get you a consultation. So I'm just going to highlight what you should look for. Okay. So this particular platform, like Headway, I use this one to test it out for my clients and to also see a handful of clients through insurance. Okay. So 14 years of experience being licensed. Now get this. If you want to be in person with me and you see that I'm virtual, don't send a message. Like, I'm just telling you what would make sense. If you are focused on major depressive disorder, and I'm telling you anxiety, stress management, relationship issues, identity issues, specifically with women going through career changes, and you read that later. If you don't fit into that box, you need to find a therapist, the box that they're not that they're even most qualified, but honestly, we choose where we want to focus our attention in certain areas of our career. Okay. I do individual therapy. Okay. I have a little intro, read it. Okay. Then we have, telehealth consultation slots. Okay. Then I give you my approach. All platforms have this. The thing is, we ain't reading it. My approach to therapy, read about the person. Collaborative, structured. You can tell by this episode, I'm structured. I didn't have notes up the whole time because I want to make sure that I hit all my points. Okay. I'm forward moving. We're going to focus and process the past, but I'm going to keep your eye on the prize. That's the kind of therapist I am. You can read the rest, right? And I also tell you when you schedule one of these consultations, but you got to live in the state of California. Okay. You don't have to live in LA, but you got to live in the state of California. So if you get on my calendar, I'm going to send you an email or a message through this system to say, please go fill out this form. And then I want you to get on my video calendar. So this is just to get us started, but you got to follow instructions. What can you expect from me? I tell you exactly how I work. Then I tell you who I am, Black African descent woman, because that's a little checkbox. What is my style? Holistic. I'm looking at all parts of your life, boo. I'm empowering you. We ain't gonna just focus on sad stuff. You feel me? But we gonna get that solution though. Okay. And then quality and insurance. This is the thing. Oh, right. I have a doctorate in psychology and we have to upload our license to the platform. They don't just slap this on here. Okay. I went to Argosy University. Okay. The location, San Francisco Bay Area. I have my master's in clinical psychology. We had to upload that too. Okay. What is my license type? Clinical psychologist. Where? California. License in. This is where you may see multiple states. Insurance accepted. If it is not listed, then you have to pay cash. Okay. I'm being sarcastic, but I'm being real. I've done a video like this in the past. And it was only given because someone sent me a text and said, one of my family members needs to know how to navigate, how to find a therapist. So I did a video. It don't get that much play, but this is how you find a therapist. Okay. It's like shopping for a car. Okay. Care credentials. We get to check off, not a lot, but our top specialties, therapy methods. Even if you don't know what these means, you can look them up. Okay. What languages? Okay. Book the session. Put a 1 in the comment box if you like, like y'all. Okay. So that's how you find a provider. Okay. You can Google, describe the type of provider, and I'm sure a lot of them are going to come up. So, um, so let me see. Some of these will come up like super big because I don't know what these. Let's see. So, no mental health professional I have seen on a show or YouTube has stated I never wanted to have a license. That is this. Yeah. So, I mean, everybody has their preference, and some people may go through the licensing process and some people don't finish. Now, here's the thing. And Dr. Roche actually said this on our last podcast episode. Some people go through the process and cannot pass the exam. I know that I have test anxiety. I put that out there, public knowledge for therapists who are struggling with the exam. That exam is not a game. Okay. And because of my test anxiety, I get paralyzed. So it took me a few times, but I don't mind sharing that lived experience story because I want other people who cannot pass the exam and those who have anxiety to feel normalized that I just want you to keep going. There is light at the end of the tunnel. But there may be various reasons as to why someone cannot get licensed. But right now, the conversation is if things are said out loud, they cannot be retracted. And I think that's the problem, is that this stuff is on replay, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, like I did a webinar, how did y'all like the information from the pieces that you received? Because again, my whole goal was to come on here and be informative, provide education. And if you know of, and or if you have your platform and you invite mental health providers, I'm going to say who may not have a big following, but we have big hours, clinical hours, right? Still ask us questions, because at the end of the day, we are impacting your audience. And last time I checked, I don't like to stray my audience a different way. Okay. So if you have any further questions, or somebody watching this later, by all means, post your question. Your questions lead me to doing another episode like this. This one was definitely not planned. My people know me. I get juiced up when it comes down to education. You know what I'm saying? And so I thoroughly enjoyed y'all. It is Sunday. I know it's late on the East Coast. And so I want to respect everybody's time. Share this episode, even with individuals who are seeking mental health services, because there were a lot of nuances in here. If you are new to the YouTube channel, there is a mix of things. I do want to be clear about that. Because I am a business mentor and coach for mental health therapists, you will see more videos on business. But there are videos when it comes down to me pouring into women service providers, entrepreneurs. I really come from a positive perspective. So even if it does say the word therapist in the title, you can still watch the video. You can listen to the episode, because I'm still a psychologist first. All right. So thank you so much for tuning in. Like this podcast episode, subscribe to the channel, share it with a friend, and let me know your biggest takeaway down below. And based off your questions, I might come through and have another part. Me and Dr. Roche are going to be going live tomorrow, though, to talk about like part 3. And it's going to be good. And we're actually going to talk about we're going to add in something new around like trauma, psychology, and honestly, based off of the level of inflation that's happening amongst everybody, but how it has impacted communities that we work with, especially marginalized populations. If that's a conversation that you're interested in, we will be going live tomorrow. I'm going to put it out in the morning, but we're going to be going live tomorrow at, what did she text me? 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So we have to find what works for us. We're working business women, moms, and working at different places, mental health and business. And so it will be available for replay as soon as we put it up. But we're going to be going live 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. All right. All right, y'all. Have a great night. Bye.